Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. Hope I find you well. I have had a very busy time as ever. I did go to the Cheltenham Festival on the Wednesday this year, which is traditionally the day we normally go. I've been going for about 6-7 years now. Obviously, that may have been interrupted for a couple of years due to, well, you know what. But I've been back this year and the year before. There's always one of my mates who definitely goes every year. He organises it, he sorts out our tickets and basically arranges it all. Last year, it was me, him and one other person who went. This year, we managed to get a bit of a bigger gang together. In fact, there was 10 of us in total. I am a horse racing fan and it is a fantastic day out. The quality of the actual horse racing is spectacular. So good. To be fair, any of the big meetings, Cheltenham, the Aintree Grand National Meeting and Royal Ascot, they're all top quality, really close, exciting races normally. I travelled there with one of my mates who now lives in Banbury, so I got the train to him, met him at Banbury, then we got the train to Birmingham before getting the train on to Cheltenham. Now, it was the first time I got the train from Birmingham New Street to go to Cheltenham. Normally I take a different route. I did wonder how it would work, so I figured it would be quite busy and popular. Basically, they have a queuing and holding pen system. So you get there, get in the queue, and they get you on the next available train. As it happened, we arrived okay to actually get the train that we planned on getting. Special mention to the announcer at Birmingham, who was having lots of fun by basically using horse racing terminology and poking some light-hearted fun at people going to the races and the way they were dressed. All good-humoured, all good fun, all taken in the spirit that it was intended. The way they did it from this pen, they basically shuffled you down to the platform and put you at different points of the platform. You just stood along the platform and waited for the train to arrive. As it happened, me and my mate had a little bit of luck because the door that stopped in front of us was actually the door to first class. And as the train was so busy, that carriage had been decommissioned for that service. Therefore, we managed to find ourselves 2 seats in first class, which made for a very pleasant journey out to the Cotswolds, I have to admit. It was a little bit quieter this year numbers-wise at Cheltenham, certainly the day we went, which I actually really liked because that meant the shuttle bus was a lot quieter. We got off the train and more or less straight onto the shuttle bus to take us to the course, which was fantastic. We met the other people we were spending the day with there, had a good chat and a catch-up, and then started to get ourselves some drinks. This year, there was a self-service bar that served lager and Guinness. You just use your bank card and you could help yourself to that. With me being celiac and gluten-free, there was nothing for me on the self-service bar, so I had to go to the bar next door, which was fine, particularly when I found out they were selling bottles of gluten-free Peroni, so I could have some beer. That worked out very nicely. It was a great day out. We had a few drinks. We watched all the races from different points on the course. We had a good look round. It was lots of fun. Now, the guy who had organised it and organises it every year, he had entered a competition through one of the bookies who have a big website presence and a big presence at the festival. The competition was he had to write about his favourite Cheltenham experience. He didn't win the competition, but he was the runner-up. And as part of that, they gave him 2 passes to the Coral Box for the day we were actually there. So fair play to him. What he could have done was taken his winning pass, chose one other person and just spent the day in the box ignoring us. He didn't do that. He kept coming down regularly to see us. And basically, as the day progressed, we took turns to go up to the box and watch a race. We just swapped out our normal passes for the pass to get you into the box. So we all had a turn. I'm not sure what the people running the box thought about that, but they didn't seem to complain. And there was only ever him and another guest in there at any one time. I went up for the final race, and I must admit, it was very, very good. I could really get used to having a box there for the horse racing. It was quite a small box, and it was quite compact inside, but there was free drinks available and there was a bookies actually inside the box so you could place your bets there. But the biggest selling point for me was the view you got from outside of the box looking over the course. You're right over the finish line. You got a great view. The best view I saw of a race all day when I was up there in that box. I didn't have the greatest day on the punting front. I managed to win no money whatsoever. I did not have any winners. I did not even have any horses that placed. I think everybody else at least had some money back at some point during the day. I didn't, but that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day's racing, we stayed for one more quick drink and then got the shuttle bus back to the train station. And from there, we said our goodbyes and got our separate trains home. It was a fantastic day. Already, we can't wait to go back for next year. I own a very small amount of shares in a few racehorses through something called Owners Group. They're really good. They give people like me the chance to learn more about horse racing and be associated with a horse. Each horse has between 3,000 and 4,000 shares. I've got 2 shares in a horse called Stage Star who happened to be racing on the Thursday at Cheltenham. So the day after I was there. That was a bit of a pity because it meant I couldn't get to see him race in person, but I did manage to make sure I was near a television when he raced. The Owners Group are really good. Basically, if you have got shares in the horse, you will get a weekly update from the trainer on your horse. There's also opportunities to go and see the horse at its stables with the trainers, or they have their own facility called EquiPrep, where the horses go for any breaks or if they're recovering from any injuries, so you can go and see them there as well. They hold open days at all of these places. They've got lots of different trainers working with them and training different horses for them. You also get regular video updates as well. And the other thing, you do get to apply for an owner's badge when your horse is racing. Obviously, it's done as a draw. There's a lot of owners for every horse, so you're far from guaranteed. But if you do get lucky, you can experience what it's like to be an owner of a horse for a relatively small amount of money. I've been a member for about 5 years now, and as it happened, Stage Star, the horse in question, was the very first horse that I purchased shares in. I have been to see him at EquiPrep and at Paul Nicholls Stables, who is the trainer, and I have seen him run in person a couple of times before too. Now, I said I didn't have any winners the entire time I was actually at Cheltenham. The day after, in the first race of the day, luckily Stage Star put that right. He led from start to finish to win the race. I was pretty much screaming my head off over the last couple of fences as he came home to win. Yes, I did have a couple of quid on him, so basically anything I lost the day before, I made up on the first race the day after, which was great. So I now have shares in a horse who has won at the Cheltenham Festival, which is quite a big deal, to be honest. If you've ever heard any of my blogcasts before or read any of my blogs, you will know I'm a big theatre fan. I always like to try and get 2 shows as much as I can. Normally, I'll average 2 a month. A couple of weeks ago, I went and saw a fantastic production in London. It has been on for a while now. It transferred from Broadway, and because it's enjoying so much success in London, its run keeps being extended. It's the play of a book I read while I was at school. In fact, while I was doing my GCSEs, although we never got to actually go and see it in the theatre at that time, sadly. The play I'm talking about is To Kill a Mockingbird, which is on at the Gielgud Theatre in London. It's produced, this particular production, by Aaron Sorkin, who you may have heard of. He has been involved in some very, very big programmes in America. It has a brilliant cast in it, including Matthew Modine, who was in Full Metal Jacket. And I found out a great story about him because I did a bit of research on him before going to see the performance. He apparently turned down the role of Maverick in Top Gun because he didn't think it was quite right for him, which obviously led to a young actor, Tom Cruise, getting another big role, which didn't do his career any harm, did it? Matthew Modine, by the way, was absolutely fantastic in To Kill a Mockingbird, as were the whole cast. It was so fantastically done, brilliantly staged. It is such a thought-provoking piece of work. It has well and truly stood the test of time. It does make you think a lot about how things have changed in the world and also how lots of things haven't really changed at all. The worrying thing about it, in a way, it's set in 1930s America. It was released in the 1960s, and you can still see a lot of parallels between then and now, which is just terrifying, really. It shouldn't be the case. It is so well done. It will make you think. It'll draw you in. It does throw up several moral dilemmas along the way as well. It was all fantastically acted, and they got the deserved standing ovation at the end. It will have to come to an end soon in London. If you do get a chance and want to be thoroughly mesmerised and absorbed in a story, then I recommend go and see To Kill a Mockingbird. It has been Mother's Day since I spoke to you last, which I appreciate can be a very difficult day for some people. For me, it is very much a family day, and I always do try to see my mother on that day. This year, I took her and my sister out for some afternoon drinks and snacks at the local garden centre. They had tea and cake. I had some tea and some gluten-free crisps. And then we had a little bit of a look around the garden centre. My mum is a big fan of gardening. She's very good with flowers and plants. So we had a look round there to see if there's anything she wanted. In the end, I ended up buying her some very small wind chimes. There were some there that were about a couple of metres long, and they made a right racket. Luckily, she didn't want them. She settled for some small ones, which I was very happy about, and so were the neighbours, I expect, too. After the garden centre, we headed back to my place, and I cooked a roast dinner for my mum, my dad, and my sister. A roast chicken, and may I say, it was an absolute triumph. I don't mind cooking. I quite like cooking. I won't say I'm a brilliant chef. I'm not, but I can do simple things adequately well. I keep it straightforward. It was meat, vegetable, gravy. Didn't really mess about. I do a mean roast potato as well, if I do say so myself. So that went very nicely. Also as well, I opened a bottle of wine that I got recently. We went to Valencia earlier in the year, and I tried some of the local wine in Valencia, which I hadn't had before, and I really liked it. So I managed to hunt some of that down. And I tell you what, we opened one bottle of that, some Valencia wine. That went down very easily and very quickly with dinner. So I'm quite pleased I've actually got a few more bottles of that in reserve. I also recently spent a weekend in Oxford with some friends. What we try to do is at least once a year, hopefully twice, we just pick somewhere and we all meet up. We normally book an Airbnb or a house somewhere that we could share. There's enough rooms and bathrooms for everybody. We'll go there. There'll be food and a few drinks and sometimes games, but generally just messing about. I came from work and I was last to arrive on the Friday night. They'd already eaten and already had a few drinks. And my girlfriend Linda was the chef that night, so she very kindly had kept some food back for me. So I had some food, we had a few drinks and a nice catch-up just in the house we'd booked that night. Next afternoon, we went exploring in Oxford, and it was a bit of a trip down memory lane for me. There was a point where I used to go out in Oxford relatively often. The first pub we ended up in was a pub that I'd been to several times over the years. Massive pub, and fortunately for me, also somewhere else that did gluten-free lager in a bottle. So that made me happy. I could have a couple of those. From there, we had dinner. I'd booked dinner because basically with my dietary requirements, it's easier if I book it because I only really want to eat in celiac accredited places. So we went to Coates, had a great 3-course meal in there. That was very enjoyable. They were great in there. We almost took over the restaurant. Then we went for a few more drinks before heading back to where we were staying. Now, at some point during the day, we got talking about karaoke. Didn't think it was going to have any influence on the rest of the day. Somehow, seemingly, I must have planted some sort of seed, because when we got back to the house where we were staying, someone suggested we, via YouTube, do some karaoke. So we spent probably about 2 hours singing along to various songs online. It was good fun, had a fantastic time. Although there was one quite surprising thing to come out of it. Somebody I've known for over 2 years now, and I had no idea this was the case. They are actually an amazing singer. They have a fantastic voice. And I only found this out when we just started doing this ad hoc karaoke for a bit of fun. She was the best singer by an absolute mile. A really, really nice voice. Honestly, I think she should definitely do more with that voice, possibly even sing professionally. If I could sing like that, I would just be going to karaoke bars all over the country every single night and singing. I think she'd get free drinks everywhere she goes for that voice, definitely. So that was quite good fun. We wrapped that up at a reasonable time, and that was pretty much another weekend done. I have a relative who lives just outside Sydney in Australia. I went and stayed with him and his family about 3 years ago. He's in England at the moment doing a bit of a tour round, and last Friday I managed to catch up with him. He was quite local to me. He was staying just down the road at his niece's place, so I went and picked him up from there, brought him back over to near where I live, and we went for a few drinks in the local pub. My parents were there and one of my aunties and uncles were there. We had a good catch up. It was great to see him. He has got a fantastic life and place out in Australia, and it is somewhere I would like to go back and visit again if I get the chance. I don't know what it is about living in Australia, but he just seemed a bit more relaxed, chilled, and certainly more suntanned than the rest of us. It seemed to definitely work for him. I actually booked us a couple of rooms at the pub and we stayed there, and then we went back to mine the next morning. And I did us a nice fry up, and some more of my aunties and uncles came over to catch up with him because they couldn't make the night before. And obviously he doesn't get over to England from Australia that often, so you kind of got to catch him when you can. So that was really great to see him. Had a fantastic time. It was just great catching up. Next time I see him, hopefully he might be back in Australia with any luck. Last Saturday night, Linda, my girlfriend, organised a games night at her place for me and her and some members of her family. Of course, as it was something at her house, she did an amazing meal for us all. It was fantastic. Greek chicken, 2 different types of potatoes, vegetables, peppers. It was amazing. Oh, and also she'd done me a gluten-free dessert, which I shared with everybody else. I'm not unreasonable. So we had a lovely meal. Then after dinner, it was time to get the games out. I think between the games they bought and the games we already had, we had about 10 in total. We only actually got round to getting through 2 different games. The first one was a game called Scrawl, which I hadn't played before and involved mainly drawing and deciphering what people were drawing. I cannot draw. I am absolutely terrible at drawing. As it turns out, I'm worse than I thought I was. I was even struggling to draw stick people. That's how bad it was. I couldn't even make them look anything like they were supposed to. As you can imagine, this did lead to the game being quite good fun. What you have to do, you get a phrase, you have to draw that phrase and then pass it on to the next person. They have to write what they think that phrase is, and then they pass it on to somebody else who has to draw it, and then somebody else has to write it. There was 5 of us playing, so each time there'll be 2 different pictures and 2 different guesses at what the actual phrase is at the end of each round. I don't think I won any rounds in that game whatsoever, although I did make people laugh a lot with my drawing, so I'll take that. That was quite good fun. And the other game we played was a slight variation on Cards Against Humanity. Have you ever played that? It's basically, I don't know, almost like a kind of parlour game where it's great fun to play it with either shy or older members of your family, because you'll get them to say things they wouldn't normally say and probably wouldn't want to say. This version was a Star Wars version. I am a massive Star Wars fan. This greatly pleased me. And I have to say, I did get a lot of the in-jokes that were there within the cards. That was a lot of fun. We laughed a lot playing that. Obviously, I can't repeat pretty much of anything that went on during that game. It's far too rude, most of it, but it's very, very funny. And we did have Linda's auntie round, and yeah, she did end up reading some things that I don't think she really wanted to, and she was definitely saying words I'm pretty sure she wouldn't say in real life. But it was good fun. We had a fantastic evening. We had planned to play more games, but the night just disappeared. It just went so quickly. Although, as the night went on, I think the time between rounds got slower and slower. I can't think what factor could have possibly made a difference in that. All I will say, though, I was just drinking tea and water. The good news is we've still got 8 games we haven't played, so I reckon we can have at least another 4 of these games nights. Then maybe we'll get close to at least trying everything we intended to. They're lots of fun. We must do it again. It's a good laugh. Once again then, even though there's been an international break, Tottenham Hotspur have been making my life interesting as ever. Our manager, Antonio Conte, has left by mutual consent, which I don't know how I feel about, to be honest. I thought he might stay to the end of the season. I know there were some problems within the club. He's not been well as well this year. He's had medical problems. He's actually lost two of his closest friends as well. So I think it was a very difficult year for Antonio. So maybe it's kind of the best for both parties. We'll have to see what happens between now and the end of the season with Stellini, who was his assistant manager, and with Ryan Mason in charge of the team. I think it's the point where the players have got to come together and stand up. They need to show if they're ambitious and if they want to be playing Champions League football next year. If they do, they really need to stick together and try and get some momentum going for the final 9 games of the season. Either way, whatever happens, I've got my season ticket. I'll still be turning up to see them play. It's what you have to do. It's part of being a football fan. You have to live through the interesting and not so good times in the hope the good days will return and it'll all be worth it. This year, the aim has to be finishing in the top 4 to get Champions League football for next season. Just a reminder that you can hear me on Radio 9 Springs between 2 and 4 every Saturday afternoon. That's it for this week's Blogcast then. Thanks for listening. Have a good next couple of weeks. Look after yourselves and each other, please. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.